a moment after she woke and before she opened her eyes, Martha thought she was at her mom's house in London. She could smell the strong tea and cleanliness all around her as she laid sprawled on her back. Her jeans and leather jacket dug into her skin and felt hot and heady, like she had a late night out and the floor was trembling beneath her. Sore and a little bit fragile, she dared to look around. Dark, industrial, noisy, not the TARDIS. She closed her eyes again. When she next awoke, she found the doctor crouched beside her, grinning encouragingly. He brashed a cheap china mug at her with a drawing of a sheep on the side. "A little milk and no sugar, yeah?" he said. "Ta," she said, struggling to sit up. Her head throbbed and her limbs felt shaky, so she checked herself over for concussion. She wiggled her fingers and toes, closed one eye and then the other to make sure her vision was okay. Everything seemed fine. Martha could remember the explosion in the TARDIS, being thrown off her feet across the console, so she wasn't missing any memory. And for all, she felt battered, but she didn't feel queasy, so there didn't seem to be any internal damage to worry about. "What's the diagnosis?" asked the doctor, with that slight, admiring smile he kept for whenever she showed a bit more intelligence than your average human type. "Okay, I think," she said. "Can you check my pupils?" He handed her the mug of tea and fished in his pocket for the sonic screwdriver. A brilliant blue light dazzled her for a second. "Both the same size," said the doctor. "Both go all small when I shine a light in them. That's what you meant to do, isn't it?" "Means I'm probably not bleeding to death on the inside," she said, batting the sonic screwdriver out of her face. "I'm happy with that." So, she had survived intact. And then she realized it was not a headache she could feel, but a deep bass line of vast machinery thumping all around her. They were no longer in the TARDIS. Wherever they were, it sank like a washing up liquid, all efficient and clean. And it wasn't her only body that was shaking. The hard metal floor beneath her trembled with terrible power. Martha drank the strong and pungent tea while glancing around to get her bearings. They were in the narrow alleyway between two huge machines, hung and noisy as a factory, an old factory or printing press, she thought, as the whole series of sturdy great machines working flat out. She suddenly remembered the dark, low-ceiling basement of the Royal Hope, where the hospital had its own power generator. Her mate Rachel had taken her down there at the end of the night shift to watch some other medical students lose at cards to the poster. Martha remembered them squeezing into a small, sweaty, claustrophobic room where you couldn't even hear yourself think. The place had the same heavy, oppressive feel to it. "We hit the engine room then," she said. The doctor grinned at her. "Very good. Yeah, smacked right into it. Sorry to think they must have had some sort of unmatchable warp core or something, and the TARDIS went a bit rabbit-like in a headlight. Don't you take much to turn her head these days, poor girl. I meant to put us down in the passenger lounge. Bet it's a lot more posh than this upstairs." "Right," said Martha. She put down her tea and struggled unsteadily to her feet. Just along the alleyway stood the reassuring shape of the TARDIS. She could still taste the acidic smoke that had billowed from the console and relayed. The doctor must have carried her out of it, letting her down here before hurrying off to find help and a mug of tea. The engines around her filled her head with noise, and her skin felt itchy with grime. Yet the dark and solid machinery seemed immaculate. Perhaps she just imagined the dirt. She struggled off her jacket. The air suddenly felt hot and clammy on her bare arms. Despite the heat, she shivered. There was something wrong about this place. She could feel it deep inside her. Then she realized she was being watched. There were 6 of them, short, stocky men wearing through leather aprons and literally colored Burma's shorts. Practical, she thought, for the hot and heavy environment. They lurked in the shadows by the machinery, watching her and the doctor nervously. Hi? She wavered at them. One of them waved back instinctively, then hid his hand behind his back. The men reminded where they were, sulking in the darkness. They're more scared of us than we are them, said the doctor quietly. You said that in Kenya, about the lions, said Martha. Well, yes, admitted the doctor. He smiled a bright smile and addressed the men. She's feeling a lot better now, thank you, said. A tea would do the trick. The men remained in the shadows watching. The doctor nudged Martha in the ribs with a bony elbow. Come on, he said, stepping forward. You need to thank them for the tea. Right, said Martha, feeling awkward. She hated being pushed in front of people except to perform. Her mom would still have important workmates around for dinner sometimes. Trish and Martha were always made to hand out nibbles. Her brother Leo always got away with filling people up with drinks. This is my middle one, Mom would pertain to her friends, took the truffled olives or carrot sticks and dip. She's going to be a leading surgeon. It's always made Martha furious, but she had never answered back. Trish, who liked to playing up to her mom's image of her, and Martha had a twisted sense of duty. And Martha knew she was right. Even now, hundreds of years in the future, she felt herself adopting familiar, joyless smile. Hi, she said, with badly fake delight. I'm Martha. The men in the leather aprons said nothing and remained where they were. She turned to the doctor. Did you introduce us, didn't you? Said the doctor sheepishly. I didn't call out a bit of nobody's respond. They probably didn't hear me over the noise of the engines. And then I found the kitchen and sort of helped myself. Sorry, I better leave them some coins in case they've got a tea club. He rummaged through his pocket of his suit jacket and inside one first. Can you remember what the money is in space in the 14th century? Martha felt guilty. Only a couple of days before, she'd thrown a gold surgeon away in the wishing well. The men in the aprons seemed to cower in the darkness, and Martha realized they must think the doctor was looking for a weapon. The poor blokes were terrified of them, and she started to understand maybe why. Then they were the lowest of the low, toiling away in the noisy, sweepy place. They would never mix with any of the ship's passengers, and they probably only ever heard from the crew when something had gone wrong. She reached her hand inside the pocket of the doctor's jacket, helping herself to a slim leather wallet that he kept in with his sonic screwdriver. He raised one eyebrow at her, but otherwise didn't seem to identify. He liked it when she showed some initiative. Martha flicked the wallet open, paused to picture in her mind what she wanted it to show, then brandished it at the men still lurking in the shadows. There was no need for concern, she said, adopting the confidence, reassuring tone that she learned from Mr. Stroker. We're not here on inspection. My assistant here, she nodded her head to the doctor, just need to familiarize himself with the ship's workings. part of his training. We're just be a couple minutes and then let you get back to your work, she smiled, her most charming smile. The men in the Burma shorts and aprons turned to each other, said nothing, and yet seemed to confer. That was good, said the doctor quietly, taking the wallet of psychic paper from her and pocketing it carefully. Slowly, one of the men in aprons shuffled forward, glancing back at his friends who kept safely where they were. Martha's heart went out to the poor bloke. She thought he must have been the one who had waved back before. That's it, she told him. Me and him were really nothing to worry about. I'm Martha, he's the doctor. Who are? The sentence died in her throat when the man in the leather apron slipped out into the light. He was tall and muscular, his eyes alive with fear and excitement, and he didn't have a mouth.